Welcome to Moose Plays, everyone. I'm the Liquor Moose, and today we will be going over my season recap for the 8th season of the GPC. And before I start, I do want to give one last thanks once again to all of the admins of the league. It would be Gareth, Rufus, Melantosh, Johnny, and Matt. I'm really glad you guys let me in on the fun for the season, and trust me, I had I had a blast this season. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and yeah. So going over what we're going to be doing, first of all, it's going to be a bit of a longer video, so that's not your thing. I mean, you're warned, it's going to be longer. That's just the nature of how I talk. But I'm going to separate it into like 3 parts, I guess. First part is going to be like the stuff that, like, the lessons I learned and like my overall experience. The second thing, I'm going to go over my draft, or like the mons I have, so like each individually talk about them. And then thirdly, I'm going to talk about my season, and like basically all the matches and all that. But yeah, so first off, the overall experience. Like I said, I had a lot of fun. The only thing, if I would change something, would be I kind of wish that more people would have uploaded videos, because it is like upload required. But like, I don't know, that's kind of a nitpicky thing. I get life gets in the way and stuff, but yeah. I don't know. There was just something about it where like it was a lot of fun seeing like everyone in the league like posting all their battles and stuff, and like all their reactions and stuff. Especially like one of the biggest thrills for me was like seeing my opponent's side of the match. Like, I don't know what it was, but seeing them play against me and seeing how they react to how I play is, I don't know, there's something about that that just makes me really happy. So that's why like I really was excited for this, and like yeah. I don't know, stuff like that. Like, I really wish that more people had uploaded consistently, just because of like I don't know, I just get pleasure out of seeing that kind of stuff. But like I said, life gets in the way sometimes, you just can't. And yeah, that would be the only thing I change about it. But like, as far as lessons I've learned 2 big lessons this time. First of all, as far as a gameplay perspective, I really learned the value of offensive toxic this season. I mean, obviously, as you can see from my draft, I was a pretty offensive team. I never really played like full offense like this, but having offensive toxic is super duper important. It's like all the reasons that you want like entry hazards, like just basically for chip damage. If you can only set up rocks, especially on a team like mine that didn't have access to spikes, offensive toxic is like perfect, because it's the rest of the chip damage that you need. So yeah, that was the big thing. Offensive toxic is huge. The second thing, and I'm kind of getting punished for this already in a different league, but I really need to drop the fair guy attitude. Because like in the other league I'm in right now, like my team is very like fair playing. Like, it's a very fair team. There's not really broken mons on it, and my god, it's just like so underwhelming. I mean, we can probably get more into that once I get into the actual draft myself. But yeah, like having Lando I and having something that like just puts an immense amount of pressure on my opponent from his team building stance, like it's just so good. Like, honestly, having like, I need to ditch the fair guy attitude is basically what I was saying. I'm also going to be ditching like normally I go into drafts with like a full draft plan, and that's what I did with the other season that I'm in, or like with the other draft that I'm in right now. And yeah, not anymore. I just need to take the best thing that's on the board and try to build my team up from there, and basically have a checklist instead of like a full draft plan. That's probably, it's arguably the better way to draft anyways, and it's definitely the safer way to draft. So yeah, I definitely need to practice that. But yeah, other than, before I get into the draft, I probably should have just put this in with like my overall experience, but I definitely do want to return for season 9 if they have it, / if the admins will have me back. I hope I wasn't too much of a burden on them, but I like to think that I was a relatively quote unquote good tenant. So I would really like to come back for next season, should they let me. So I'm going to be really excited for when that happens. But yeah, so let's move on to my draft. So I'm going to go over the mons that I had, and sort of the mons that I dropped, like not too much in like in detail, but yeah, I'm just gonna go over all the Pokemon that I had on my roster at some point in this season. So first off, starting with Landorus I, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little underwhelmed with it at the beginning of the season. Like, there was something about it, like I thought it was just gonna be able to absolutely break like, I don't know. It breaks. I think it was more just like, you see 8 games played and only 10 kills, and that seems a little low, and I'll admit it kind of is for what Landorus Eye actually should be doing. But yeah, I was kind of using it wrong. Like, I was using gimmicky sets at the beginning with, like, when I played against Christian, I had, like, the gravity Landorus. Like, I get why I did it, because he has a Celesteela, or had a Celesteela, but, like, I don't know. There was something about it, I couldn't really tell what it was, that just made Landorus look really, really underwhelming. But then I realized, like, it's mostly because, like, the checks to it, like, the really good checks, are, like, the borderline stuff that you want to get in, like, a tiered draft. So, like, I guess, okay, so the best example I could provide is, like, first, Bronzong is probably the best Landorus counter you could ask for. In a tiered draft, granted, it is a tier 4 Pokemon usually, and it's honestly one of the better tier 4s, so that always gets drafted. But in my opinion, like, one of the next best counters or checks to Landorus Eye is usually Mandibuzz, which you usually find in tier 2 in tier drafts. And, like, when you look at Mandibuzz in tier 2 and look at everything else, what would be in tier 2, like, no one's gonna want to take Mandibuzz as their tier 2 Pokemon. Jeez. So when you see there's a few others, like UC doesn't always get drafted, Mesprit doesn't always get drafted, stuff like that. And, like, and even Crest, yeah, actually Crest doesn't always get drafted, even though, like, everyone complains about it being too thick and, like, it probably should be banned or whatever. But yeah, like, there's just some Pokemon that, like, the best counters to Landorus are the ones that don't always get drafted, barring Bronzong, pretty much. So, like, well, in tier drafts anyways, because, like I said, like, when compared to the other Pokemon in their tier, they just don't stand out as much. Whereas in a point-based draft, that happens a lot less frequently, because, like, the tiers, it's basically like cutting up everything else, like cutting up all the tiers and, like, just separating them into how good they are based on, like, I mean, you know how a points-based draft works. Like, it's basically like all the checks and counters to Landorus Eye are more likely to get drafted in a point-based draft than they are in a tiered draft, I would say. So maybe that's why you can see, like, some of the teams had, like, better, like, more creative counters to Landorus Eye, I would want to say, as opposed to someone like, I guess the big one that comes to mind is, like, when Lars used it in the GBA in Season 5 and 6. Like, a lot of teams just didn't really have a way to deal with it defensively. I mean, it's actually, Landorus is quite easy to deal with offensively, honestly, if I'm being completely honest, which is probably, like, the only reason why it's even allowed. But yeah, so, like, defensively speaking, and if in a point-based draft, I think Landorus does a little bit, like, it's easier to check Landorus in a point-based draft, and that's why I think it seemed a little underwhelming. But then I realized how much pressure it just puts on opposing teams from team building, and yeah, like, overall I really liked Landorus Eye. I don't know if I would draft it again, only because, like, for a few things. One, I do want to use, like, a bunch of different stuff. For two, it being your ground type on a team is again, like I mentioned before, like, in my season, not the greatest, because, like, my team in general just didn't switch into electric attacks all that well, and having Landorus be my ground type and then have it be 4 times weak to ice, not the greatest. So, like, as far as a pure ground typing goes, it wasn't the greatest. It was just meant as a wall breaker, and I didn't really want to draft another ground type because I already had Landorus. So, like, I mean, if I ever get like a back wheel pick or, like, a late first round pick and Landorus is still sitting there, comparatively, compared to the rest of the stuff that's still there, I would most likely take it again, but I don't think I would plan to draft Landorus again. Like, I think it's a good mon. I don't know. There was something, there was something missing from it. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't Z it. I know Gareth at the beginning of the season said he was very surprised I didn't Z Landorus Eye. My first reasoning for it was strictly because, like, Sheer Force. Well, actually, Sheer Force does boost the power of Z moves, but only the power of Z moves that have a secondary effect, which are all Pokemon exclusive, so Landorus didn't get any access to that. Like, what I mean is, like, Earth Power with Sheer Force gets boosted to 117 base power, but Tectonic Rage from it still only comes off as, like, a Tectonic Rage becomes a 90 base power Z move, or, like, whatever the equivalent to that is. I don't know off the top of my head. So yeah, that was like the main reason not Zing it. Like Sheer Force didn't benefit it, and it wants a Life Orb too badly. To be fair, like the coverage it got, I probably should have Z'd it, but then at the time, I guess at the time I could have Z'd it and Magmortar together, and it would have been fine. Because I would more preferably like 2 usable Z move users as opposed to like 1 big one and then like 1 throwaway mon because like the points are left over. But yeah, so maybe I should have Z'd Landorus, maybe not. I'm still not sure. I was overall relatively happy with it. A little disappointed I couldn't break with it a little more. Like it got more than 1 kill a game on average, but I still think I could have used it a little bit better. And yeah, I mean, I would still recommend drafting it. I mean, what else can I say? It's really good at what it does. The speed is like, for a wall breaker, it's good, but it's just too easily offensively checked, and that's probably the only reason it's allowed. So yeah, that's Landorus. I'm gonna skip Weavile for a second, and I want to talk about Mega Manectric first. But yeah, so Mega Manectric, I thoroughly enjoyed Mega Manectric. I know the stat lines don't really talk a lot about how good Mega Manectric was, but like just from a prep standpoint, no, everyone brought a specially defensive ground type because they just didn't want to get swept by Mega Manectric. That was like the only reason they brought it. And for me, spending 11 points to do that for basically forcing my opponent to bring 1 specific mon every week, so they basically only had 5 Pokemon to bring, like, I don't know, that seems worth to me. But yeah, like, having this be 11 points, I thought was, like, criminally underrated. It's so fast and hits so hard, and, like, I don't know, the fact, like, from experience, me using Raikou in my other league right now, Raikou is super duper underwhelming. Like, the extra bulk on it, it doesn't matter. It gets 1-hit KO'd by everything that OHKO's Mega Manectric. It gets 2-shot by everything that 2-shots Mega Manectric. Like, the bulk isn't real. I'm completely honest, the bulk isn't real on Raikou. Like, I find Raikou very underwhelming. And then when I use Mega Manectric, I just find it to be so much better because it's so much faster and hits a lot harder. And on top of that, like, it actually has a useful ability. Raikou has pressure, great. Like, you're not going to PP stall with Raikou. And then, like, but Mega Manectric has Intimidate. And, like, while it doesn't seem to affect it itself that much, like, we saw in my Week 9 game against Diet Tight, like, Mega Manectric's Intimidate literally won me the game. Otherwise, my Weavile couldn't have lived that Flare Blitz from Arcanine. Like, I don't know. Mega Manectric just seemed to be, like, way better than the other fast electric. Like, not better than Koko, okay? Not better than Koko, but I personally think Mega Manectric is a lot better than Raikou, having used both currently. And, like, the way Mega Manectric's stat lines added up, it doesn't do justice to how well, like, again, from like a team prepping standpoint, it actually did. And don't forget, like, from the game against Johnny with the whole crit shenanigans, like, had he not crit me, this would be a 6 and 5 mon instead of a 5 and 6 mon. So I think it would have been a little bit better. But yeah, like, I really enjoyed using Mega Manectric, and that's the kind of fast electric type I like using. Raikou just seems so underwhelming because, like, it's not as fast as you will. Like, I don't think 115 is that fast, and I know that seems weird. Like, 115 is fast, but, like, I normally try to get something above 115 on my drafts, so, like, that's not, like, the quote-unquote real fast mon of the draft if I draft Raikou. Like, even in the draft I'm using Raikou, and now I still drafted Crobat right after that. But yeah, and then the extra power that Mega Manectric has is definitely worth it. It's definitely worth the less coverage that Raikou has. Like, I would take the raw power over the coverage any day because, like, it's still good enough at what it does, and I think Mega Manectric forces prep more so than Raikou does. In terms of, yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it. So I really enjoyed Mega Manectric. The stat line does not reflect how well I think it performed this season. But yeah, so that's Mega Manectric, and now let's talk about Weavile, because Weavile, my goodness, was the MVP for my season. This thing is just nuts. Like, I've been watching a lot of Gregulator lately, and Greg always talks about how Scizor is a bread and butter mon for him, and I honestly think that Weavile is turning into a bread and butter mon for myself. First thing, well, there's two things, but first, I thoroughly enjoyed Weavile much more than I did then I did this. Jeez, I cannot talk. I thoroughly enjoyed using Weavile this season than the last time I had it for two reasons. One, I was an idiot last time I used it. If you weren't around for then, I had this and Tapu Koko together, and I would always scarf one of them because my idea would be, hey, my opponent's gonna run Scarfers, I should scarf my Fastmons already to outpace their Scarfers, and that's just a horrible idea. You should scarf something else. But anyways, so that was one reason. For two, the team prep that my opponents had to do was they usually brought their specially defensive Psychic types to check Landorus, and they brought their specially defensive ground types to check Mega Manectric. And Weavile preys on both of those Pokemon, or like both of those kinds of Pokemon. Like, Weavile was just like, it just destroyed teams this season. I mean, look, 7 games, 13 kills, that's almost double. And like, it got into fourth, but fourth on the kill leaderboard, but I don't know, people didn't update their docs, so that might not be accurate, but I would still guarantee that it's probably top 10. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed Weavile. Like, again, like I've said before, Knockoff is probably like the second best move in the game behind Scald. If I had one critique about myself using Weavile, it would definitely be me not running Pursuit on it enough. I talked about it being a Pursuit Trapper, and I just never ran it. But yeah, I'm sure like part of that was also my opponents realizing, hey, Psychic type to check Landorus. Oh shit, he has a Weavile. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed using Weavile, and it's definitely like, it was definitely a Pokemon that, like if it's there and around where I'm stuck, I'm more than likely gonna take it. Even if it's 17 points, I probably wouldn't pay more than 17 points for it in a point-based draft. That's asking quite a lot, and especially looking at the competition of the stuff that's in the 17-point bracket, or I guess what's in the 18-point bracket. Yeah, it's literally like all Mega Pokemon, and then Manaphy and Mew. And yeah, Weavile just like, the only thing holding it back from being more expensive is just its linearity, but what it does provide you is very unique, so I guess that's kind of the trade-off. But yeah, Weavile was just by far, it was by far the MVP of this season. I don't have enough good things to say about Weavile. I highly recommend drafting it for anyone, especially on an offensive team, but even on a balanced team, like, Weavile is just so good. Next up, we have Registeel, and like I said, this wasn't my first choice. I would have liked Bronzong here to take a Lando Eye counter off the board, but instead, that got sniped, so I took Registeel instead. And I mean, for what it was pretty decent. It, like, literally my only criteria, like, originally, like, my only criteria for this pick when I drafted it was a Steel type that sets rocks. That was it. I had no other criteria, and the only reason I decided on Bronzong would be it was because of the whole thing with checking Lando Eye. But yeah, so that got sniped, so one of my friends, Mark, who's helping me draft, he said he's used Registeel before and he really liked it. If that's really all you're looking for, is just a Steel type that sets rocks. And he was right. I mean, it's good at that sense. It's very passive. As long as you know how to properly play passive, then I guess it's fine. Like, I mean, there's not too much to say about Registeel. It's just, it sits there, it has recovery, or sorry, it has no recovery. The only recovery it has is leftovers. I mean, the fact that it can't be toxic is nice, but I mean, that's like all Steel types. Like, I don't know. There's not too much to say about this. It was just something fat. A little passive, a little bit of setup fodder, but you have to kind of play around that. You have to realize, hey, they hard switch this offensive mon onto this thing. They're probably going to set up, so let's check it offensively. Like, that kind of stuff you're going to have to think about, but, like, I don't know. Again, if you're looking for just a Steel type that sets rocks, then this is perfectly fine. Especially at the budget it was at. I was a little surprised it wasn't like 9 points instead of 8. I had a lot of 8-point Pokemon on my team. I still stand by that though. I know a lot of people think 10 Pokemon on your team is not where you want. You definitely want 11. I disagree only to the fact that it's the quality of the mon, not the quantity. Like, depth definitely takes you far, and like that's what I kind of went for. I wanted to draft depth as opposed to like as many mons as I could. Excuse me. But yeah, not too much to say about Registeel. Like, I mean, it's kind of there. I enjoyed using it. If I'm stuck in a pickle again for a steel type, I'd probably pick it up. I like the big thing was steel types that set rocks. Like that's a big thing for me personally, and like that's probably why I will never draft Celesteela. I'm gonna be honest. Like for whatever reason, Celesteela just doesn't get stealth rock. I don't know why. It just doesn't. But anyways, if you're looking for a steel type that sets rocks, Registeel is for you. Now Whimsicott, I know I use this poorly. Like the stat line shows that I used it poorly. Again, like the thing was, I drafted this for my fairy, because I wanted to save points, so I was looking at kind of like the mid tierish or the mid costing fairies, and like this is definitely the best one there. I just know I used it poorly. Like there was so many times where I crafted a very good Whimsicott set for the match, and then just threw it away. The big one being against Ben, when Ben had a total of 1 fairy switch in, and then that was it. And I just threw it away against the Sandslash. Like I get like the whole thing with the other situation, like my Chrome being buggy or whatever, but still, like there were so many times where I had what I thought to be a very, very good looking Whimsicott set, and then just did nothing with it because I was just an idiot. Or like I guess another thing that happened was like, no, actually, in week 2, I kind of threw it away because like it got knocked off, and leftovers were important for that match. In week 3 against Carson, right? It was weird to sound, but I brought Whimsicott to pseudo check a Scizor, and he didn't bring the Scizor, so Whimsicott just kind of like was whatever. But yeah, there like I used it poorly, and there were also a few times that like I just prepped it for a certain mon and my opponent didn't bring it. But yeah, like the 8 games played is definitely proof of how like kind of glue-ish Whimsicott can be. But yeah, I know I used it poorly. I still recommend it because the season I had before this, I used it and it was really good. But the difference in there is that like I think, for whatever reason, that league, maybe just because it had like newer players, but they had more issues like playing around taunt and encore. Whereas like when I'm in this league, I know my opponents are gonna be like, if I switch a Whimsicott in on something that's setting up, they're gonna obviously be expecting encore. Like that's just a given. So like I don't know. I find this league played around Whimsicott a lot better, but I still really like it and I still recommend it to people to try. Maybe not as a grass type, but as a fairy type if you're looking for that. But yeah, so moving on to Toxapex. Like I said, I picked this up mostly looking at my week 10 game against Ballistic, where he had a Mega Lopunny and an Azumarill. And I knew Tentacruel was just not going to be able to, to take the brunt of that. But yeah, like, so as far as the defensive mon goes, Toxapex is extremely, extremely good, and obviously everyone knows that. But I didn't really like using Toxapex all that much, mostly because like it just failed to crack back. Basically, it can take the hit, but like it's scald. Even if it was a super effective hit, like it wasn't even a 4-hit KO sometimes. Like that's pretty sad. That's pretty pathetic. I'm not gonna lie. And that was like the main thing. Like that's one thing I like about my bulky waters is usually like be able to take hits and also crack back. So like your Melodics, your Slowkings, your Slowbros, like those things can easily take hits and then still hit relatively hard back. Where at least a super effective hit is probably going to be a 2-hit KO. Yeah, I didn't really like Toxapex. I liked it as a defensive mon. So if you're just looking strictly for a defensive water type, then I guess this is your thing. But like, I personally like my defensive water types to be able to crack back a little harder. So that's why I didn't really like Toxapex. So I can't really say, like, if you're just looking for defense and like hazard setting and kind of the stall tactics, then Toxapex is the thing for you. If you want something like me that can hit back relatively hard, this is not the Pokemon for you. What else can I say? Next up we have Uxie, and this one was a weird one. Not really a weird one, but like after using all 3 of the Lake Trio now, I can honestly say Uxie is probably my least favorite. I think Mesprit is probably the overall best one. All of these are in terms of like their value and what they can offer you. I would say Mesprit is the best one, and Azelf's just my personal favorite because I used it in another season and I thoroughly enjoyed using it offensively, especially with Z crystals. If you draft as Azelf, I highly recommend putting Z crystals on it. I really don't think it has an extreme amount of breaking power if you don't have it. Like, you can life orb. I'm not supposed to talk about Azelf right now. Uxie was just kind of there. So like the slow U-turn was fine, but I mean, Mesprit is a slower U-turner, and Mesprit just does more things. Offensively, it's pretty garbage, as you know. So like offensively, Azelf is just better than Uxie in any other way, which means the only comparative one we have left is Mesprit. And in my opinion, everything that I wanted Uxie to do, bar being a Zygarde check, Mesprit probably does better. If you want to check it offensively, you can still run a Scarf set on Mesprit, and that makes a little bit of sense. Not a whole lot, but it makes more sense than Scarf Uxie, that's for sure. As a defensive rocker, I still like Mesprit a lot better, mostly because like the options that you can run on it are just like so much more wide than with Uxie. And then the big one was I thought getting Heal Bell would be good on Uxie. It's not really as good as I thought it was. I like ran Heal Bell maybe twice and I never clicked it. I don't know if it was because I didn't have the opportunity to, or there was just like a point where I could have and was just like, no, I need to do this instead. Whereas like Healing Wish on Mesprit is just way better. I don't know. Like I personally really like Mesprit more because it can do more things and just has more overall viability than I think Uxie does. Uxie is fat, yes, but like again, other than maybe being a banded Zygarde check, I think Mesprit just kind of does everything that Uxie needs to do, but better. So I don't know. If you want the Flexmon, I would definitely suggest taking Mesprit over Uxie. Uxie is still all right. Again, if you're looking for the bulk, like just the raw bulk, then I guess go with Uxie. But I still think Mesprit is better than this. Next up, Blaziken, and I have to say, like I like to credit myself with being very good at using mixed attackers, and Blaziken definitely fit that mold very well. Like, I know you only saw it in one game, but even the game, like, or even the prep that I did against Ballistic for week 10, like, I thoroughly enjoyed building with Blaziken. And yeah, like, I think Blaziken is a very sleeper mon in, like, the, like, as far as, like, the budget fire types go. And like the fighting typing on top of that is really great. Obviously, like fighting stab, it's not hard to switch into, but if you don't resist it, it's gonna hit hard. But yeah, I really liked building with Blaziken, even though only the 2 games that I had with it. Like Blaziken, there was just like something about it. It was just like, man, this is a lot of fun to build this set. Like I don't know why it's so much fun, but it just is. But yeah, I really liked it. In hindsight, I definitely think I should have Z'd it. When I picked it up, I definitely should have not given the Z points to Xcloud for the first pick and then taken the points away from Whimsicott. I thought I would use Z Memento more often than I did, and the one time I clicked Z Memento, my Landers was already at full, so I could have just gone for the regular Memento. And then, what was the other one? Oh, right, and then all the other times I ran Z Whimsicott, like, was week 10 against Ballistic, which was a forfeit, and then, against Josh in the semifinals, and I didn't click it, because defogging away the Aurora Veil was too important. But yeah, I think I should have Z'd Blaziken, because, like, especially for the game, like, if I had Z Blaziken, it absolutely would have been there in week 8 against Gareth, to check that Mega Scizor, or not really to check the Mega Scizor, but, like, it just, the reason I didn't bring it was because there were too many like pseudo checks to it. So like he had a Druddigon which could kind of do it if he brought the right set. He had a Suicune which could do it with the right set. Same thing with Necrozma. But if I had Z Blaziken, it would have been a lot different, because like I said, my first thought was Power Blaziken for Solar Beam on on Suicune. But if I had the Z Crystal instead, I could have gone for Bloom Doom, which would have been a lot harder, and it could have, I don't think it would have been a 2-hit KO on Suicune after a Flare Blitz. I don't know, maybe after a high jump kick. That sounds about right. Probably high jump kick into Bloom Doom from Solar Beam probably would have knocked it out. But yeah, I think on something like this, as like very high potential for a mixed attacker, I really should have Z'd it. That was just my mistake. I just thought at the time that Z Whimsicott would be fine because of Z Memento, and then I just never brought it or clicked it or whatever. I still think Z Whimsicott is good, but I kind of think Z Blaziken would have been better, in all honesty. But yeah, I really enjoyed playing with it. If you're looking for a budget fire type, I highly recommend this Pokemon. I have nothing really but good things to say about Blaziken. Even if it is only Blaze, I still think it's really good. Next up we have Haxorus, and not as like outstanding as like its former performance on teams that I've had before, but I mean, like, it's still a Haxorus. You know exactly what it's gonna do. Like, it's most likely gonna Dragon Dance. If you have webs on your team, it's gonna Swords Dance. You definitely have to Z Haxorus. If you draft Haxorus, you pretty much have to Z it, because like Z Haxorus is an absolute nuke, and it's just like it hits so hard. Like, you can Bandit, but then it's missing out on speed. You can Scarf it, but then it's missing out on some power that it wants. Even with a 147 attack stat, like, excuse me, even with a 147 attack stat, you're still gonna want to set up with it. Like, I mean, you even see it with Thunderous T. Like, Thunderous T has a 145 special attack stat, but even without boost, like, there are just some things that cannot break. So, like, you always want to run Nasty Plot on it. And it's kind of the same thing with Haxorus, but I mean, with the Z Crystal, it's whatever. Like, it makes sense. Like, I think you definitely need to see Haxorus if you draft it, and I still really like Haxorus. Its physical bulk is actually not terrible. It's just the special bulk isn't very good. But yeah, I still, like, if you're just looking for a mid-tier dragon type, it's fine. I would definitely take, like, Salamence or the Lotties or, like, Dragonite over this, but if you're looking to save some points but still get a very, very good dragon, Haxorus is definitely the one you should be looking at. It's very good for its point total. Like, it's very good value. Speaking of very good for its value, Exploud. The stat line does not, like, jump out at you as an insane Pokemon, but, like, Exploud, just every game I brought it, it did pretty much exactly what I need to do. Barring the game against Gareth, it didn't really do a whole lot other than a little bit of scouting. It absolutely wrecked Ethan in week 2 because he just wasn't prepared for it, but Ethan's team is like the exact kind of team that Exploud preys on, basically just fat teams. Like, when I saw that Specs Boom Burst doesn't, or like the only thing that doesn't get 2-hit KO'd by Specs Boom Burst is Assault Vest Max Specially Defensive Primarina. I was like, yeah, this has to come. Like, Primarina was the biggest threat to my team in that match, and if he's that set, it's a lot less of a threat. So, yeah, Exploud was just so good, like, in that game. And then in the game against Carson, even though I lost that game, I needed damage on the Diggersby, and I was Scarf Exploud, and it got the damage on the Diggersby that it needed for my Manectric to revenge it. When else did I bring it? Against Gareth. Like I said, it didn't do too much in that game. It did show me, like, it did confirm that the Rotom was specially defensive, so I wasn't too worried about it in general. But other than that, not too much in that game. And then against Diet Tight, that was huge. I needed that, because, geez, that Mega Venusaur was otherwise a huge problem for my team. And that thing just ensured that Mega Venusaur couldn't beat me 1v1. And even though it only got, like, it got the one hit off to force it out and then kill the Rhydon, and then I switched in Exploud on his Synthesis, and then I was able to get it under half for Weavile to kill it later. But yeah, so Exploud was just like, I have nothing but good things to say about Exploud. And again, linear Mon, but I mean, if it's good at what it does, it doesn't matter if it's linear, does it? Yeah, Zing the Exploud, that was a mistake. Not really a mistake. It was just at the time, during the transaction period, I wasn't sure if I wanted to make transactions at the very beginning. And I was at the beginning of the order, so I was like, okay, I need some time. I guess I can Z Exploud to save up some time to keep this draft still going. It was basically my thought process behind it, because I didn't see myself using the Z points at the time. Now I obviously know I should have Z'd Blaziken, but yeah. That was Explode. I have nothing but good things to say about it. As someone who's always been screwed over from prepping against an Explode, I always be like, I can't, like, I can revenge it easily. That's not the issue. I just can't switch into it. And that's just because Explode has no switch-ins. Yeah, no, it's got Scrappy, so it has no switch-ins. Other than, like, resisted hits, really. Like, if you're a Rock type or a Steel type, like, that's really the only way that you're switching into Explode's Boom Burst. I have nothing but good things to say about it. If you're looking for a budget wall breaker, like I said in my draft analysis video, basically, I go to Explode. It's one-dimensional, but it absolutely does the job. Now, as far as the mons I dropped, I guess we'll start with... we'll start with the 3 that aren't listed here because they didn't come to a single game. So, Komodo, I still think is a little awkward. My team wasn't bulky offense, it was just offense, just considering what was on my team at the time. There was, like... I don't know, it was awkward. I wanted to Scarf it, but I really couldn't, because then you're losing out on power. If you run a band, or band specs, then you're not fast enough for anything. In hindsight, I should have bulked it out and boosted it. I still think it's a little awkward, especially just with the matchups I had at first. Like, in week 1, Christian had a Celesteela, which, barring elemental punches, Komodo can't really touch it, really. And, like, the elemental punches aren't stabs, so they weren't doing too much to it, and Celesteela was definitely coming that game. Against Ethan, I don't really know why I brought it. Maybe it was because I was just too scared of, like, Flynium Z Rock Polish Landorus, which would have, like, destroyed any version of Komodo, basically. And then against Carson, he had Mega Gardevoir, which I assumed Carson was a good player. He wasn't going to run Hyper Voice. He was going to run Moonblast, and the only way I could really set up was if I had Roselli Berry, basically, and which would be fine. But then I just kind of lose out on a lot of power. That Life Orb definitely would have. I would have needed Life Orb for that match. It was really awkward, and ultimately, like, the 13 points I was paying for that wasn't really worth it for me, whereas I could pay only 11 points and have Haxorus, in my opinion, better dragon, and one that I'm definitely more comfortable using. So, I don't know. It wasn't for me. If you're going bulky offense, then I definitely think Komodo's the dragon for you, but I personally like Haxorus better. The second one was Gourgeist. I actually... For both Gourgeist and Magmortar, I guess I could talk about them both. I never got to use them, but I still like them in theory. The only reason I ended up dropping them was because, like, my FO really wanted to go, like, full offense, wanted me to pick up Darmanitan, and the only way we could do that was if we dropped both Gourgeist and Magmortar. I still think Gourgeist is a defensive grass type. Like, it would have been fine because that could have been a decent Banded Zygarde check, especially since it has Will-O-Wisp and access to Synthesis, so for recovery, like, I think it would have been fine. So, like, 5 points for it is actually, I think, is quite worth. Like, as a defensive grass type that can also cripple physical attackers and get access to reliable recovery, I think Gourgeist is extremely worth. Same thing with Magmortar. Magmortar was only 4 points, and that thing's coverage was actually insane. Like, that's an easy Z user. Like, it's not fast, sure, but, like, its coverage is actually nuts, and it's a decent scarfing speed. You can just flame charge if you want. And like I said, Z Magmortar is actually, like, legit. I really wanted to try it. It was just, like, every time I put it on the team, I was just too weak to something. So I had to take it out to put in something else. Like I said, like, in the entire season, like, my ground ice switching was just, like, basically non-existent, other than Yuxi. And yeah, like, I don't know. I still would like to draft either one of them and actually use them at some point. But for now, I just couldn't. And I'm definitely gonna keep my eyes open. Like, if I'm in a need for any of those categories, I'm definitely gonna look to those two, because I think those two are very, very valuable. Now, as far as these two go, Darmanitan, I know my one friend Mark is a huge fan of Darmanitan, but I didn't really like using Darmanitan all that much. It's so linear, yet, no, it's just so linear. And I know you're thinking, like, Brandon, you're saying that with a Mega Manectric on your team, but, like, Darmanitan just doesn't force prep as much as, like, the rest of my stuff does. Like, it's either like Mega Manectric, always a specially defensive ground type. Landorus Eye, usually a specially defensive psychic type, and all that kind of stuff. Darmanitan, you could say, was like bulky water, could stop it, but like I said, no one's gonna bring bulky water against a Mega Manectric. Well, actually, they could still bring bulky water if it's like really, really bulky, or like it's a water ground. Like, I don't know, there was a lot of stuff I didn't like. The fact that like once people saw how I was using Darmanitan, it was relatively easy to predict that like first off, I feel like Darmanitan pretty much always has to come Scarf, because like if you run a boosting item, then yes, its power is insane, but then it's just so slow, and the low speed is not worth it. And also the coverage that Darmanitan gets for what you want it to do is just like not good. Like, it's literally limited to Flare Blitz, Earthquake, Rock Slide, Superpower, and then you always want to cut one of those to fit U-turn on, and then that's it. There's nothing else that you want to ever run on Darmanitan. Where, like, at least with Mega Manectric, you can at least have the hidden powers, which is all of them, but I mean, like, hidden powers really only one move. Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and then usually you get Overheat or Signal Beam, and then, like, I mean, you saw me, I ran Toxic quite a few times on the Manectric, and Darmanitan never wants to run Toxic, because, like, if you're scarfed into Toxic, that's a pretty bad time, because then that's just a free switch into something else. But yeah, I can't say I really like Darmanitan all that much. It was just too predictable, I guess. Whereas, like, at least with Mega Manectric, like, you always have to wonder what its coverage move is. Like, you have to wonder, like, which hidden power does it have? Even though, like usually you can see with your team, but, like, with the situation with Jacques, where he had two ground types, like, which hidden power did I have each game? Does it have Toxic? Could it possibly have Signal Beam or Overheat? Like, at least there's that. When Darmanitan comes in, it's just like, okay, it's clicking Flare Blitz more than likely. Yeah, I didn't really like Darmanitan. I don't know if I would... Like, the 11 points you're paying for it, I think you're just better off with a different fire type for less points. Or one for more points, like a better one. But if you want a budget one, I definitely don't recommend Darmanitan. I think Blaziken's a lot better of a fire type than Darmanitan is, I'm not gonna lie. The versatility of the moves that Blaziken can have definitely outweighs the raw power that Darmanitan has, and especially, like, also the setup potential, since it does get Agility, Calm Mind, and yeah, it does get Calm Mind. So Agility, Calm Mind, and Bulk Up. Yeah, and then the last one, Tentacruel. And again, like, I don't really know. Like, I get why Tentacruel is drafted a lot, but, like, I don't know if I just didn't use it right, but, like, it just didn't fit my playstyle. It's fast, yes, but its lack of recovery is definitely the biggest downfall to Tentacruel. And maybe it's also, like, the fact of how I like to play, because, like, when I see, like, I am one who loves knockoff spam, so when you see that Tentacruel gets knockoff, you're like, I'm just automatically, yes, Tentacruel must have knockoff, I have to put it on here. That being said, you always want to run Scald on Tentacruel, so you're like, okay, yes, I'll put Scald on here. And then you're always like, okay, I'm running Tentacruel, I have to Rapid Spin, so I'll put Rapid Spin on there. So then, like, that's 3 moves already that if you say, I'm going to run Tentacruel this week, that's already 3 moves you put on there. Where, like, so, like, really you only have, like, and again, like, the knockoff one, that might just be me, but Scald and Rapid Spin, yeah, you usually always want Scald and Rapid Spin on your Tentacruel. So only having 2 to 1 move that you can customize every week just doesn't seem all that great to me. And, like, for how fast it is, yeah, that's good, but, like, a lot of times you want to invest in bulk, because if you don't invest a lot in physical bulk, then it's not taking many physical hits, because its physical defense is trash. I don't even remember what it was, I just know it was really, really bad. Yeah, I didn't really like Tentacruel all that much. I get why people like it, and I get why people want to draft it. I just don't think I would draft it again. I think I would rather draft another Rapid Spinner. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents about my whole team. So I guess going over all my season games. So starting with Christian, I think I could have played this game a little bit better. Maybe subbing first turn wasn't the right idea. Maybe I should have just switched out into something, probably the Whimsicott. But yeah, apparently my one friend Sean tells me that apparently Ice Shard from my Weavile that game into Thunderbolt was a guaranteed kill on the Salazzle, but I'm almost positive that I remember seeing that it was a roll to kill from there, and seeing that I already had to live a roll with my Mega Manectric based on whether Fire Blast missed or whether Sludge Wave or Flamethrower could kill at all. Like, I had to fake out there. Like if Ice Shard into Thunderbolt could kill like I thought it couldn't, then I guess that's on me. Because then I would have had an extra Mon to sack with my Whimsicott. Assuming that like everything else stayed the same, where like I lived the roll on the Sludge Wave and then I could kill with the Thunderbolt back. Because then I just Volt Switch on the incoming Celesteela, sack off Whimsicott to that, and then clean up the game with Thunderbolt. With Mega Manectric. But otherwise, like, if Ice Shard into Thunderbolt was a roll, then I still think my play was valid. Because, like, I was in a situation where I needed to give myself the best situation to win. And if adding another roll to that just doesn't do that. So I needed to delete one roll, so I had to deal with probability less, basically. Yeah, other than that, like, I don't know. Like, I guess the first game, like, you could say the first game of the season, like, always, like, kind of propels your way, how you're gonna go through the season. I kind of agree with that. I mean, I think I've only been ever in, now 2 leagues that, where I've won week 1, so, I mean, that's 2 out of 6, so I'm still under 500. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, I think I could have played that game a little bit better. But I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right? Next up, the game against Ethan, where xCloud destroyed Ethan's team, and I was so happy with it. I got greedy at the end. This should have been a 2-0 victory instead of a 1-0. I thought for whatever reason, if he was Scarflando, he would still basically be dumb and lock himself into Earthquake. That was not the case. I should not have thought about that, because the obvious thing would have been Superpower or like Rock Slide or anything, really. I guess if he locks himself into Rock Slide, then xCloud could still do it. Or maybe not at the health it was at. I don't remember. But yeah, I just thought for whatever reason that that he would just go for Earthquake, when that's clearly not how he can win, because I have my own Landorus in the back. That was just me being dumb. I should have seen that, and I should have definitely won 2-0. That was on me. But either way, I'm still happy with that win, and I'm still glad that xCloud put in a ton of work in that game. I was so happy with how it performed. Then the game against Carson, and like, I don't know. Again, there was like the whole thing with like Greninja's Water Shuriken hits on Manectric. I was guaranteed to live 3. If the 4th one happened, then I would have died, and then same thing with the 5th. But then he got a crit on the 3rd one, so we don't really know whether I could have killed the Manectric from, killed the Greninja from there. I would have Volt Switched out into Weavile. Basically, I thought at first that the best thing he could do to hurt me would have been Fire Punch, but I actually learned later that, or like I guess after the game, that he was actually Power Up Punch Shadow Sneak to deal with my Weavile. So if that were the case, then honestly I think the only way I could have won that was I had to live the Water Shuriken, and then Volt Switch on the Gren, killing it, and then go to Weavile, and then basically had to count on an Icicle Crash flinch. That was like the only way it would work. Because Power Punch into Shadow Sneak did kill, and he knew I was banded, because like banded Weavile wrecked his team. it was that simple. But yeah, other than that, not too much. I don't think there was too much to say. I know I sacked Whimsicott that game. I mean, that's a theme throughout the whole season. I just sacked Whimsicott because it just, oh my god. I think, whatever. That's just me being an idiot, or like not playing well with the Whimsicott. I know it's better than how it performed this season, don't worry. And then the game against Johnny, and yeah, I thought about this game a lot during the playoff race. I'm not gonna lie. There were so many times during it, like at one time there was there 5 3-5 teams at that point, or something like, there was something like a crazy high number of 3-5 teams, and I was just like, man, if I didn't crit, or if I didn't get that crit against, or I guess if Johnny didn't crit me with the High Dragon, then I would be 4-4, and I'd be ahead of all this, and I wouldn't have to worry as much. Like, there wouldn't be as much to lose as there would, like, it would just be a lot of pressure on me to win as opposed to just not losing. And that would have been nicer in the playoff race, but either way, it drove me to win, so I guess that's kind of better. Yeah, I thought about that game a lot during the playoff race, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I was... Oh, one thing I didn't mention, the spike layers, because he crit me. I thought at first that crit was still 2 times for damage, but I'm dumb, and crit's only 1.5. So with him having 3 layers of spikes, like the crit did matter, obviously, but without the 3 layers of spikes, I would have lived still, because I would have been at 88. It did 61 max, so half of that is like 30. Oh, so no, maybe not. So it was a roll. So the crit was a roll if you only had 1 layer of spikes up. So maybe, like, I remember I mentioned about, like, with my Registeel and his Roserade out, I kind of just let him set up spikes, and I thought about making the offensive switch into Haxorus. I probably should have done that in hindsight, just to A, pressure it out, and B, not get the layers of spikes out. So yeah, so with only 1 layer of spikes up, then yeah, so it would have been 25-70. So it would have been a roll to kill with a crit if he only had 1 spike up. So maybe I probably should have done the offensive switch in that game, but I don't remember why. Oh, I set up my rocks the first time, which that's still valid, and then I just kind of tried seismic tossing it, and that definitely didn't work. I definitely should have switched down to Haxorus to offensively pressure it. So that was, I guess, my bad still, but I mean, the crit still happened. Like, I basically, in that game, I gave myself a 34% chance to lose. Like, when you combine crit plus the flinch chance. I think Dark Pulse has 30% chance. Either way. And it just so happened that the dice rolled in the 34% favor. Nothing I can do about that. But moving on to, yeah, week 5 against Josh. That was bad. that was my worst game in a while up to that point. Since then, I've had worse games, which is not good. But yeah, that game was not good. He outprepped me. He outplayed me. Like, I can't say he outplayed me once he showed Hypnosis on Alolan Ninetales, because once he showed Hypnosis, I was like, whoa, why does he have Hypnosis? And like, I didn't think he would bring it, and like bring Hypnosis, and I just played poorly around it. I was just like, I don't know what I want to put to sleep. I don't know how I'm going to play around this sleeping Pokemon. If I let the sleeping Pokemon go down, then something else can get put to sleep. Like, I played poorly around that, but again, Josh did say that was one of the better teams he has built in a while, and I have to agree with him, because in our playoff game, he brought a very similar team that also kind of dominated. But yeah, yeah, that game was not good on my part. I was pretty upset at myself after that game. Like, I don't want to say that I prepped poorly, barring not putting Pursuit on Weavile, because there was definitely a turn where I could have just straight up killed the Latias from where it was at. When I U-turned with Landorus out from his Latias switch, I definitely could have just straight up killed the Latias with Pursuit if I had it, and I just didn't, because I didn't run Pursuit a whole lot this season, and I definitely should have. But yeah. Yeah, that game was not good for me. I was pretty upset at myself after that. And then we got to the game against Ben, and that was a confidence booster for me, because that was a pretty big win. I'm not gonna lie, like, I mean, there was a little bit of hacks involved. I don't know how much the hacks really mattered. Like, the only hacks was the crit on Alamamala, but that didn't really matter because he could switch out and get Regenerator, which is whatever. And then after that, I guess the only thing about that would have mattered was my future play, because it was a roll to kill with another knockoff, which would have meant me knocking off again was a safe play, which is why he switched out into his Emboar, which ended up getting his Choice Band knocked off. And then after that, there was the Icicle Crash flinch. He went for Rock Polish on that play. I thought he was going to just attack what was in front of him. But yeah, then I had Ice Shard. I honestly, I don't remember if I had Ice Shard that game, but I feel like I did. I honestly don't remember. If I had Ice Shard, then the Rock Polish didn't matter. If I didn't, then like I said, I still have Registeel in the back, and Registeel could definitely take the hits that Diancie can dish out. Like, that was one thing I had to say about this match, because like I personally felt like I had the matchup in this one. And this is not to put offense on Ben, but Ben's team, in my opinion, just didn't have depth. Like, it basically had, like, the Fairy Dragon Steel Core of Kieran Black, Jirachi, Mega Diancie, and then it had Torn T, and then that was pretty much it. Like, there was not a lot of depth after that. Like, I think after that, like, the Mons were, like, Alamamala and Emboar, and, like, he had Tangela and Sandslash and Honorno, and, like, I think Tangela's good, but, like, when you look at all of that stuff combined, they're, like, 3 or 4 point Pokemon. Like, look at my team. My team absolutely punishes teams that don't have depth. Like, what's a, like, sure, you have the Sandslash to deal with the Manectric, like, Weavile destroys that. And even Weavile, to an extent, destroys the Tangela. Like, just with knockoff and Icicle Crash. And then Landorus, like, he had no switch-ins to Landorus, pretty much. Like, my team definitely punished, my team punished teams that didn't have a lot of depth, which is why I think my team kind of had the matchup in there. Like, pretty much my thought was if I had those big forecheck, I could kind of deal with the whatever else came my way, which is pretty much what ended up happening, I'm not gonna lie. And then the game against Jacques, it was kind of a pretty, like, generic game, I'm not gonna lie. It just came down to, like, I could have stalled out the Raikou had he not got the crit on with the Thunderbolt on my Toxapex. I know that's kind of a theme. I personally felt like I got I don't want to say haxed, because, like, there was just a lot of key crits that happened in key situations. Like against Johnny, I definitely, like, hacks lost me that game. Like, there's no two ways about it. It straight up lost me the game. Against this one, or against Jacques, I think it just kind of sped up the game. I'm not gonna lie. I already felt like I was in the uphill battle, and then the crit kind of just lost any momentum that I tried to gain. Like, I honestly think it was still like, I was gonna end up on the losing end, and then the crit just, like, sped up. Because, like, my play on that turn was recover on the turn he crit me, and then I couldn't recover. It was a roll to kill from there again, so, like, there, no idea if the crit mattered. Like, the crit might not have mattered. Who knows? But we'll never know, because there was a crit and hacks happened and stuff like that. But yeah, I was a little upset. A little upset. I don't know. I still think I prepped well. It was just, like, that one thing. Like, I still think the Peck Spring to stop, because, like, I feel like I've said this a million times, but, like, my Weavile just had such a good matchup against Jacques' team. The only thing he had to stop my Weavile was Infernape, so I had to bring Pex to check the Infernape. That was basically it, and then Pex just kind of got wrecked by Raikou. My whole team kind of got wrecked by Raikou. I know it... excuse me. I know I said it was a little underwhelming. I still stand by that point, but again, my team just didn't switch into electric types all that well. And then after that, we played against Gareth, and yeah, that match was, like, if it wasn't for that misplay, Gareth still would have had a shot. That misplay straight up just cost Gareth the game. He, instead of clicking Roost, he clicked U-turn, and yeah, that let Landorus come in for free. I knew once he clicked webs, I knew I had to keep Landorus healthy, because I didn't want it to get caught in the webs. It was the only one I had at the time that didn't get affected by webs. So, like, and since his plan was to set up web sweep with Sock, Landorus naturally outspeeds Sock, so I had to keep Landorus alive. Luckily, he pretty much gave me a free switch into it. I think if we replayed in the playoffs, I really don't like my matchup, I'm not gonna lie. Because, like I said, in the team builder and all that stuff, like, Thunderous T was a huge threat. Like, it's sort of less of a threat just because I have a Weavile, but, like, definitely the Necrozma and the Suicune were huge. I wasn't really sure if I could break them, to be honest. Like, Landorus has breaking power, but, like, Spadef Necrozma eats... excuse me, it's way too fat. Suicune is way too fat. Oh, excuse me again. Yeah, like, Landorus... It was weird in that matchup, but, like, I would not have liked my chances if we had played again, because Gareth definitely would have been on his game at that point. Because another thing, like, when we played this game, it was like, I think it was like 2 o'clock a.m. his time, and he had also just gotten off of work, so he must have been, like, super tired. So, like, the situation wasn't that great for him, and, like, yeah, again, if we had played him again, I wouldn't have liked my chances, I'm not gonna lie. And then the game against Jason, yeah, like, I mean, what else to say? Intimidate, drop the bulk on Weavile, it was so good. I still think my prep was a little bit better. Yeah, I want to say my prep was a little bit better. Like just the X-Cloud being there was huge because it just needed to be there. Weavile picked up 4 kills that game. Like that was actually insane. I thought Weavile, honestly, I put in Weavile in that game to just like kind of be a filler mon. Like just be like, hey, I don't have a 6th Pokemon. Weavile's good, has priority and knockoff and stuff. I'll put it in, which is weird because Jason had a Hariyama on his team, and Hariyama's like a hard counter to Weavile, especially since he was he had access to Z Hariyama. So I figured, yeah, he's definitely gonna Z Hariyama and like just be a dedicated Weavile switching, but he ended up being Belly Drum Citrus Berry. So I mean that was a thing. But yeah, I like not too much to say about this one. Again, this was just another well played match on both sides. Jason was saying like his play was to Morning Sun instead of extreme speeding my Mega Man Electric. I don't agree because electric terrain from his Tapu Koko was up at that time, so Manectric was literally doing a minimum of 70% to Arcanine. So it either dropped or put it like well in revenge range. But yeah, like his play, I think his play to win that game was definitely to Morning Sun on my knockoff. Because then I knock off his item, he lives like he did in the game, and then he Morning Suns and my knockoff is doing less, and then he kills me with 2 Flare Blitzes. That was his play. He just, like, he had the right idea of Morning Sun, just the thought was at the wrong time, basically. But yeah, luckily we did win that game because that was basically the game that, like, propelled us deeper into the playoff race. It did knock out Jason, so that's a thing. So if I had lost, I would have been knocked out. And, yeah, I don't know, not too much to say about that game. It was pretty standard play. And then against... no! Oh, no. Sorry, I have to see that. Against Ballistic, yeah. I mean, it was a forfeit win. What can I say? I like my prep. I kind of like my matchup. I didn't play any mocks. It was a long time between building and when we were supposed to play. Like, I built at the beginning of the week we were supposed to play, and then that whole week passed, we didn't play, and then there was that whole other week before I was given the forfeit win. And yeah, that was also at a time, like, I kept telling myself I should record a team builder for this, and then I just didn't, because it was just at that period of time where I was like, I'm getting burnt out of uploads, so I just won't, or like I'll procrastinate it, and then it ended up being a forfeit win anyways. I was burnt out on uploading. I was not burnt out on mons. I was still well in the mind of like the build and like getting ready to play and stuff. I'm a little upset, not upset, but like disappointed it couldn't happen just because I like playing and stuff like that. But yeah, I can't really say too much about this match because it was a forfeit win. And then my playoff games. So against Jacques, I really liked my prep. Obviously, the Cursed Registeel won me the game. That was a little... I don't understand. Everyone, like, freaked out, but... like, when it happened. But, like, I kind of thought, like, Cursed Registeel... not really a thing, but, like... I thought it was, like, in the uncommon territory, where people use it, but it's just not its best set. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because, like, there was one other set. I was against Carson to check as Mega Gardevoir. I was seriously considering running Max Specially Defensive Assault Vest plus Power Up Punch. Because even, yeah, at +1 it was an OHKO, and then it was a guaranteed 2-hit KO on Gardevoir uninvested with Iron Head. And then, at that point, I could switch into it. Like, it was a 3-hit KO, but that would rely me switching into it, taking it, and then he would have to land 2 more Focus Blasts. No one lands 3 Focus Blasts in a row, let's be real. Like, I don't know. I felt like there was a little bit of unexplored creativity with the Registeel, which is why when I brought in Cursed Registeel, like, I thought it was a little weird to see people, like, get extremely excited for it, I want to say. Like, I didn't think it was that far-fetched of an idea. The far-fetched part was running Counter and Toxic. Like, I think Cursed Registeel I didn't think was a bad set. It was just seeing Toxic and Counter on it was a little weird. Like, but it was necessary. Counter for the Nape if I wasn't set up already, and then I needed Toxic because that was legitimately the only way that set was beating Unaware Quagsire. And then, yeah. like again, not too much to say about that other than like the spicy curse registeel actually working. Like that match was just again like it was a pretty standard match, and then the game against Josh, and yeah, that like I said at the end of that game, like the score was 2-0, but the way the game played out made it not seem that way. Josh kind of was in control that whole time, and yeah, I don't know. I thought I prepped well. Obviously, I didn't prep enough, or like my prep wasn't as good as his. Even though he brought a very similar team to last time, I didn't think he'd do that. But I guess seeing just how good of a matchup that team had, I guess I shouldn't really be surprised. But yeah, like I said, like the only time I got my foot in the door in that game was like when I U-turned with Landorus to get in Blaziken to kill something, and then he just sacked a Shuckle, and it's a Shuckle, so who cares about it? It already got a Brox. Yeah, that game wasn't my best showing, but that just gives me more motivation to try to compete extremely hard for next season. Like I said before, I would love to be a part of season 9 if it happens, or slash if the admins will have me back. I really hope they will, because I'd really like to join again and hopefully draft a team more fit to my style, because in this draft, pretty much barring the Weavile pick, because none of the people helping me draft really liked it. That was like all of them, and they all like playing offense, and I was like, man, that's not me. But I think I still did decently okay with this. But who knows? Maybe next season, if I'm let back in, I hope I am. I'll draft something that's more my style, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to draft a new team again, especially in this, because this is the first time I ever did a point-based draft. I really like it. I don't know if I like it more than the tiered draft, but it's definitely an interesting twist on it. But yeah, that's really it for the season. The season recap. If you have any other questions, you can just let me know in the comments below. And yeah, don't forget, I don't know if either Josh or Johnny will be uploading the finals, but when this goes up, the next day should technically be when the finals go up. So go watch Josh and Johnny play. If either of them upload, I'm sure Josh will, or at least I think Josh will. But yeah, watch that game, see how the finals shape up, and yeah. That's really it for me. Again, I'm not uploading PDL just to give myself a break from uploads. If I make playoffs, maybe I'll upload that. But other than that, it'll probably just be just a couple fun uploads like from there. I kind of want to do a few more arenas in between GPC seasons just because that's fun. Or like just like stuff with my friends, because like that stuff's fun whenever we've laddered together and stuff. Maybe I'll record it sometime. But yeah, that's it for me. I guess keep your eye out on the channel for whenever the next upload is, be it GPC related, be it other stuff related, or whatever. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.